Thank you for listening to UBM Talk.
Who are these guys?
That's my theme music. Every good hero should have some.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for listening to UrbanBroadcastMedia.com. This is Baseline with Chris Bass. That is actually the name of the show, and of course, Chris is still out. Chris will be coming back soon. That I know for a fact. I'm Deborah Rowe, and I'm really happy to be here with you. Our phone number here is 312-754-4333. And I invite you anytime between now and 6 o'clock, feel free to pick up your phone. Come on into the program. We've got lots of things we're going to get to. But before we move further, I spoke with Chris. I spoke with Chris, I believe, last night. I spoke with Chris Friday, was it? Yeah, Friday. So Chris is sounding great, and we're just really, I know you, so I say we, because I am as well. We're just really excited that Chris is getting better, and he's getting better like really, really fast. And you know what? Just in case anybody's thinking, because I said this to Chris, don't rush yourself back, Chris. Actually, Chris, he's doing this at his own pace, and because I think the doctor said he was clear to, come back when he wants. So he's going to trust his own body, and that's what we all need to learn to do. Trust our own body. All right. Also, you know what? Last week when I, along with Harold Lee Rush, we filled in for Chris. And for those of you who were listening, I know I had a ball. I had a really nice time. So, Harold, if you are listening, sir, it was so much fun. I said it already, but I just want to say it again. And speaking of last week's show, I have my YouTube channel now, but I'm trying to do my videos a little bit different, so it's taking me just a little bit longer, but the video is all finished. I say video because I guess that's what it is, but it's the show, but I've added a significant number of images to kind of correlate with what Harold, I, and our guests were talking about. So when I'm off the air and when I'm back home, it's already uploaded, it's already processed. I just didn't click, that's not uploaded. Well, it's just so, it shouldn't be technical, but for me it's kind of technical, but it's one more uploading process that it has to go through. And when I get home, I'll just take my pointer finger and I'll push one button and it will be up on my YouTube page. And speaking of media, I would love it if you would visit my blog, and it's called Deborah's World. It's Deborah's World blog, and you can access that at Deborah, DEBORAH, Rowe, ROWE.blogspot.com, and come on over to the page. And on that page, you know what? I talk about everything that I want to talk about. That's like the real beauty of having your own blog. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So it doesn't just have to be, I want to talk about the latest with Ashton Kutcher. He just got married, which congratulations to him. And I hope he stays married. But I don't have to just talk about entertainment. I don't have to just talk about politics. I do talk about politics and I do talk about entertainment, but I also talk about the latest news events, current events, science, whatever. Like I said, sometimes I just talk about people, and that's more than enough right there. But whatever it is that is of interest to me, that is exactly what I blog about. And of course, on the second Monday of the month, I have to remember now because this is like my third consecutive week here at Urban Broadcast Media, but it is on the second Monday of each and every month that I do I call it the radio component to my blog. So it's Deborah's World on the radio. And we are in with Chris, and I call it a show within a show. And Chris has given his stamp of approval, obviously, or else I wouldn't be on with him. So I invite you to join me for my show. And I guess kind of a program note, I shouldn't say much, but I'll just say this much. I'm not going to be here next Monday. I'll just leave it at that. I will not be here next Monday, but I'll rejoin you in August, the second Monday of the month. All right? So here's what's coming up on the show today. Later in the program, I want to get your what do you know about this? Now, I've read two articles, and the articles are about a poll that was taken that said about 55% of millennials, 55% of millennials, actually they were more specific than that. They said Obama millennials, clearly meaning young people, what is that, between the ages of, 24 through 37? You'll call me and correct me on that. You know, they always come up with all of these names. We had the Gen X, Gen Y, and all of this, of course, starting off with boomers. And so the millennials, they say they want to leave America. 55% say, this is not working for me. So I want to get your take on that. And you know what? Maybe you're not a millennial, but maybe you share their feelings about this, the country, the state of things, and you too would like to hightail it out of here. So we're going to get into that. And we're going to talk also about Donald Trump. Harold and I touched on it. Actually, we talked pretty extensively about it last week, but new developments I want to get into. So I want to get your take on Donald Trump and specifically his comments about Mexicans. So we'll get into that. And I'm just going to say this guy's name, George Takei, and it may actually be Takai, but he gets on my nerves so much, I have never taken the time to even learn how to pronounce it, and that's kind of rude. I recognize that, but you know him from Star Trek, actually. And he is, well, I know he's very popular on Facebook. So many of you are probably his Facebook friend. And so that doesn't mean we have to become enemies, but I really want to kind of take off from his criticism of Justice Clarence Thomas, who said, and this is just a little bit of what he said, that slaves had dignity, essentially is what he was saying. And that really did cause an uproar. There was a big controversy about that. The idea that Clarence Thomas said that slaves had dignity. And you know what followed that, right? The people who criticized him? Uncle Tom. Well, I'm not calling Justice Thomas and Uncle Tom by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share with you a really good piece that I read concerning George Takei's his criticism of Clarence Thomas. So we'll get into that. And the thing that's been in the news forever, and it really has just been elevated since the tragic shootings in South Carolina. I want to talk also about the Confederate flag. And I did write a piece about the Confederate flag, giving you, my truest feelings about it. So you can find that over at Deborah's World, again, deborahroad.blogspot.com. But before I go any further, I'm going to put these stories that are making news aside for just a moment, because I have to talk with you about something that's more personal. You know what I've discovered about myself? And this is actually, it's not really a new discovery, but in a way it is. I have an issue with time management, and I never really thought that I did. I always put all of my not finishing things or whatever, running late or whatever, getting someplace, a few minutes later than I wanted to. I always put it on procrastination. Don't you do that sometimes? You say, I just procrastinate about everything. I'm always like, okay. I'm laughing at Brittany. She's nodding her head. Yeah. I have really come to the conclusion that procrastination is not necessarily my big issue. I think my real big issue is time management. And I'll tell you why I say that. Like many of you, I was off for the holiday. In fact, I was off for 3 days. And there were a number of things that I had on my to-do list. You must do this, that, and the other. Well, the way I tend to work is that the thing that I want to do most, I do that first. And I'm thinking other people do that. But the problem with me doing the thing that I want to do most first is that I just get totally absorbed in it. I spend all of my time on it. I will not do anything else until I have completed that one particular task, that one item on my to-do list. I won't do anything else on that list until I've completed that item to my ultimate satisfaction. I mean it. I don't care if it's writing. I don't care if it's editing. I don't care if it's house cleaning, whatever it is. Pardon me. I don't see a cough button in here, so I had to turn my head away. But my point is, I literally can spend 8-9 hours on one project. And it doesn't bother me. I don't feel overwhelmed. I don't feel under pressure. It's very relaxing to me because I am approaching and I am executing at the level that I want to. Now, this makes other people crazy, other people like my husband, but I'm just like that. And in a way, I'm almost thinking that's a flaw. On one hand, it's good that we want to be exacting and very particular about the things that we do and put our names on and our stamp of approval and all of that kind of stuff. But you know what? On the other hand, I've got to learn to draw the line. I've got to learn to say, okay. My husband tells me that all the time. Okay, that's enough. You can't do it all at once. Stop, walk away, come back, continue it another day. But that is so excruciatingly painful to me, and I mean that. It's like, no, I want to finish what I started. So I'm just wondering at 312-754-4333, what is your personal flaw? Because some people, they I don't know, people sleep too long. They sleep, I'm always in the bed. I'm always tired. That's not me. Because I really do still function primarily. I say function. Others may say you're not really functioning, but I still function usually on about 5 hours of sleep. That's good for me. I can do 4 hours, and yeah, I'm a little bit more forgetful, and I may be flubbing and making a few mistakes, but I've never, ever, ever needed 10, 11 hours of sleep. And I know people that they sleep a lot, and they say they don't want to sleep as much, but they're always tired. So I don't know if that's a flaw, but what would you like to change? That little personal thing that you do, that thing about yourself that you really want to change. Now, here's the thing. You have one. I mean, you may have several things that you want to change. But if you don't feel comfortable about calling me and telling me, hey, this is Judy and this is my problem, you know what? Just assume a name. Assume a name. And let's talk about that, because I'm wide open. I'm an open book. And what made me want to talk about it, I started working on this one project. And it was tied in with the show from last week, but I wanted to enhance it by adding a lot more images. And you know what? I've done the videos now 3-4 times, and I put a handful of images in, and I try and place them in the right place. But this time I said, I want to do that better. I want to make this, more collaborative between the pictures and what Harold and I were talking about. And then I wound up, I put so many in there, but I loved it. It's right. It's the way I want it to be. So I just wanted to kind of get that off of my chest about the time management deal. Because even coming in, Chris and I've been talking. I know I'm coming in. I wasn't late or anything like that. But having been in radio since, at least, 21 years, that's when I started in Chicago, not even counting college, I understand you need to get down to the studio early, and you need to especially in talk radio, you need to go over and lay your show out and all that kind of stuff. And I've done that, but I wanted to leave sooner. But then I found, maybe I should do this. Oh, and before I leave, I really should do that. And to me, that's just a time management issue. So if you have had this problem yourself and you've developed or you learned a way to manage your time better, I seriously, and I am not kidding with you, I would love to know, how did you do it? What are you doing differently? How did you stop fixating? And some might say obsessing, but I say fixating. How did you stop fixating on one thing that is sucking up all of your time, causing you to just throw everything else, out of sort? But I accomplished one good thing. That's always, I think, the problem with people that have issues with time management. You're always thinking, but I did that thing perfectly. That one I got, it's just perfect. It's exactly the way I wanted it to be. And you know what? Maybe we can't always do things perfectly. Actually, I did read once that people who procrastinate, that's one of the problems that they have. They sometimes spend so much time perfecting whatever it is that they're doing that I guess they don't ever get to anything else because they're perfecting it. But I don't want to call it procrastinating. I've been calling it procrastinating for years. I'm changing the label. My new flaw is time management. It's nothing to be proud of. I'm not saying it in a, bragging way. People wait for me. I'm not saying it like that. I'm saying it in the sense that if you have techniques, if you know how to do whatever you need to do in a timely way, teach me. Show me what you know. I'd love to know it. All right, 312-754-4333. That's the number here. So come on into the program. I want to move on because I want to. And you know what? If you kind of like think about it later, well, I don't know if I want to share all of my secrets. And then like later on you say, well, what the heck? I really do want to help Deborah. If you call up about the time management thing, I'm going to take your call. I'm going to bring you right on in. Right to the head of the line, because I honestly do want to know, how did you do it? What did you do differently? I want to know that. All right, let's just talk a little bit about Donald Trump, because Trump is all up in the news, and people really don't seem to be able to get enough of Donald Trump. And he's going to make sure you never get enough of him because, I've said this before, and I have no problem saying it again. Donald Trump has diarrhea of the mouth. He always has. This is nothing new. And I'm not even making that statement based upon his controversial statements about Mexicans. I'm putting that aside. I've always thought that Trump, and this is one of the reasons why, he's a fantastic businessman. I mean, he's built a lot of stuff. And yes, we know his father gave him a great head start. But still, he has not only sustained, but he has really just advanced his business in ways that I'm sure a lot of people don't like as a serious businessman. But he's in television. Obviously, he's into branding. He has licensed out the Trump name on a number of things, champagne and neckties and mattresses and who knows what else. He's still a part owner of beauty pageants. So he's a smart man, not to forget his real estate deals, which those have been a little bit, shaky. And then, of course, he just flopped in the casino business. But when it's all said and done, the guy's worth $9 billion. And I heard him the other day say, and it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more. And I believe him. He's really good at what he does. But he cannot control his tongue. And I think it's written somewhere that a foolish man can't control his tongue. And that's what I look at Donald Trump, and I've thought this many, many times. I could take you more seriously if you would take yourself more seriously. Because I think serious people, they are mindful of what they say. Some people say, no, not necessarily. I mean, he just doesn't take any prisoners. He just tells it like it is. He just pulls no punches. And he may do all of that, but still, he puts his foot in his mouth repeatedly. So here, And I don't have the exact quote, but I think by now we all pretty much know what Donald Trump said. And essentially what he said was that Mexico, they send all of their bad people here. They send the people that sell drugs. They send the rapists. They send the criminals. And then he capped it all off by saying, and I think they even send some good people. It may have even been a few good people. I think he actually said a few good people. Now, what kind of mess is that? I mean, really, if you are, at odds with the president, or not even the president, it's really a whole slew of politicians on both sides of the aisle who have done a horrible job in terms of border security and in dealing with the issue of illegal immigration. But yeah, the president, because he's done this whole DREAM Act thing. But if you don't like that, there is still a way in which you can approach that. And then if you are running for president, I would think that, yeah, you want to get your name out there and you want to say things and you want to do things that put you ahead of the pack. But I don't think you want to do it that way because, of course, we know that Hispanic organizations and businesses such as Univision, they put pressure on NBC and they demanded that NBC sever its ties with Donald with regard to his beauty pageant. And then what mattress company was it? I don't want to name the wrong mattress company, but he had a branding deal with a big mattress company, and they said, sorry, Donald, you're fired. They wanted nothing else to do with him. And reportedly, there have been other businesses as well that said, you know what? Anybody that says those kinds of things about an entire group of people, we don't want anything to do with him. Having said that, Donald did not lie. And I said that last week. Donald Trump did not lie. Donald Trump either intentionally misspoke or he just misspoke about the part when he said, and I think they sent a few good people. And the reason I kind of think he regrets saying that, he actually tweeted out, and this is what he said. And again, I got the first sentence verbatim, and that's probably all that matters. The very first thing he said in his tweet, like immediately after all of the dust up, I love the Mexican people. So which is it? Either you love the Mexican people or you love the Mexican people because you love criminals. And I don't think that latter is the case. I actually think that Donald Trump got carried away because, again, he was making his a campaign speech or, speaking to people that he wanted to get support from. And illegal immigration is a major issue. So when he said that the Mexican government sends over all of their bad people, the people that they don't want, all of the people that are committing crimes and selling drugs and bringing drugs and raping, that stands there. But then he said, and I think they sent a few good people. That just blew everything out of order. Because Donald Trump is absolutely right. There have been, and I actually have some statistics concerning illegals and their crime rates. And these are not pretty numbers, which just goes back to the point that Donald Trump, he did not lie. He did not lie. Some of them are criminals. And that percentage, I'm going to try to pull that up in just a moment. And he also did not lie. Some have been convicted of rape. And you know what? It may not really resonate with us, the actuality, the reality of what he said, because we're here in the Midwest, okay? We're in Chicago, and yes, Chicago is a sanctuary city, and Chicago does have a large number of Mexicans. Now, it's up to you to figure out Mexican Americans. Yes, we have Mexican Americans, but how many illegal Mexicans we have, I really don't know. But I don't think we get to feel the brunt of activity that people that live in border states get to feel by illegals who are running across the border, people who live in California, people who live in Texas, people who live in Arizona. And I myself, I've read numerous stories about how people have literally had to fight illegals, how women have indeed been raped, how children have been raped. So the man did not lie. I'm Deborah Rowe. I'm sitting in for Chris Bass. You're listening to Baseline with Chris Bass. Our number here, 312-754-4333. You're listening to UrbanBroadcastMedia.com.
Now back to the conversation on UBM Talk.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be another one of those funky ones. Hot soul,
dance. You're listening to UrbanBroadcastMedia.com. I'm Deborah Rowe in for Chris Bass. This is Baseline with Chris Bass. Our number here is 312-754-4333. So come on into the program. We're just talking before the break, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Let me tell you what's coming up a bit later in the program. We're going to talk about the Confederate flag. And also, according to a poll, many millennials say that they want to leave America. They can't make it here. They want out. So I want to get your take on that. And maybe you have a millennial in your life that shares this particular sentiment. So we want to talk about that. And then George Takei. Each time I say his name, I'm going to say it differently. Takei this time. And then I'll say another one another way. Before I do that, let me also just thank Dana, who was producing the program in our first hour. Dana just saluted, and she's saying bye-bye. So thank you so much, Dana, for all your help here. And Brittany will continue to hold things down. Again, 312-754-4333. Can we go to the phones? We certainly can. Let's go and say hello to Tanya. Hi, Tanya.
Hey, Deborah, how are you?
Good, and welcome to Urban Broadcast Media.
Thanks. I just wanted to say about your time management problem.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the air quotations when I say that because you are running away from the problem. It is procrastination. It's not time management. It's procrastination.
But no, wait a minute.
Perfectionism is a form of procrastination.
Perfectionism? Is that right?
I'm sorry. What was that?
No, I'm saying, so perfectionism is a form of procrastination. I've seen that before, but I don't really think that's true.
No, it is, because what you're doing is you're trying to make sure everything is perfect on any particular project that you're working on, down to the smallest detail and all of the minutia that goes with it, and it's just a way of putting off getting to the next thing that you need to do.
You know,
that you don't want to deal with.
That is so funny, because when I was editing the show from last week, putting the pictures, the images with it, no joke. At some point, I yelled out, "He said it again. Now that adds 2 more seconds." And my son said, JR, he said, "Mom, what are you in there doing?" Because I just was obsessing over something that was so small. But I felt I need to get it right, and I just yelled out, "He said it again. That's 2 more seconds." But so, do you know any techniques? Do you have any advice, Tanya, on how to better manage time?
No, I can't help you with that, because I am a huge procrastinator myself. My problem is not the perfectionism. Mine is, I almost think I have the adult ADD. I can't focus on any one thing long enough to get it fixed and move on to the next thing.
Really?
After working on something for about 15 minutes or so,
yeah,
I'm ready to move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and I end up not getting anything finished. So,
wow.
Sorry, I don't have any advice for you.
But you just wanted to make it clear, it is procrastination.
It's procrastination, yes, because that's the first step in fixing a problem is understanding what it is. So it is procrastination now. I'll send you some links to give you some advice on how to get out of that.
She's a little bit too sensible for me, but you're right, and I would appreciate the links. I really, really would, Tanya. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, thanks again for calling.
All right.
312-754-4333. And you can do exactly that if you have some tips on how I can. Tanya says it's procrastination. Okay, I'm leaning towards that because she says she has links that she can share with me to kind of back that up. I want to say it's just poor time management, but whatever it is, if you deal with that issue, if you have overcome this problem, then I'd love to hear from you as well. We were just talking about Donald Trump, and I was saying that Donald did not lie. And, you know, as a matter of fact, I've done this a few times. I don't know why I do this, seriously, but like every few months, I just log onto the FBI's 10 most wanted list. And I don't know if they are American citizens or not, but they are overwhelmingly Mexicans on that list. At least the last time I checked it was. And you can't go by that because that's only 10 people, maybe even only 6 or 7. But the crime is a reality for a lot of people. And again, I think the thing that got Donald in the most trouble is when he said that. And yeah, I think they sent a few good people. Well, first of all, we have millions, and I actually know it's tens of millions of illegals in this country. And if they were all mostly criminals, then we would just have to all just shut down, never come outside, never do anything. So clearly, it's the majority that are the good people. All right, but here, one more thing about Donald Trump, because this whole thing has become, I'm sure, very worrisome for him, and worrisome in this sense. I don't even think that Donald is worried about too many more business associates breaking ties with him. Because what happened when NBC Universal decided that they weren't going to carry his beauty pageant anymore? Then the Reels channel, they stepped up. And actually, the Reels channel, they got a real good deal. I mean, a really good deal. I think they paid $100,000 for the right to air. And I keep calling it the beauty pageant because I can't remember if it's Miss Universe or if it's Miss USA, because I think he has interest, I know he does, in both of those pageants. But it will now, the one that NBC canceled, the Reels channel will pick it up. The thing about that, though, you've got to have cable to see the Reels channel. So that being that. But what I think that's worrisome to Donald Trump, it's a fine line when you are dealing with being critical, particularly being critical of minorities, and especially being critical of illegal immigrants. You know, a lot of people seize the opportunity to attack you for being critical of them. So Donald wanted to, I guess, say, you know what, whatever Jeb Bush may have said, and I really don't know what Jeb Bush have said about Donald's comments, but Donald went to Twitter and he decided he wanted to tweet his feelings. And he said that Bush, and here's the quote, doesn't understand anything about the border or border security. In fact, Jeb believes illegal immigrants who break our laws when they cross our borders come out of love. He was like, he laser focused. He just went laser on Jeb Bush and says, now he doesn't even understand the issue. I at least understand the issue. I'm willing to stand up and say what's happening. Jeb Bush doesn't really want to talk about it because I think Jeb said we do need to increase border security. And Trump apparently feels that's not good enough. And you know what? He's right. He's right about that because every candidate says we need to increase border security. We need to protect our borders better. And then they do nothing except for pass legislation that says all illegals can come in. And if you dream about being an American, damn it, you're an American. And Trump is saying that's not good enough. But now here's where things are really starting to get dicey. Apparently, someone that Donald Trump follows on Twitter tweeted this. Now, this is another person. This is not Donald Trump. But someone else said that Bush likes the whole illegal situation, Mexican illegals, because of his wife. And it was in Trump's stream because apparently he follows this person. This was another tweeter. He says that Bush likes illegal Mexicans, Mexican illegals, because of his wife. Because, you know, Jeb Bush is married to a Mexican American. And apparently Donald Trump has deleted that tweet. He didn't want to take it that far. All right, so we're going to put that one here on the table. And again, it's open for you at 312-754-4333. So come on into the program. And again, I do ask this question because I did see, I guess it was about 2 days ago, Donald Trump is actually surging in the polls. A lot of people like the fact that he is not pussyfooting around, that he is saying, because he said some other things, that the border situation is like we're in a fight. He says America is in a fight. And apparently not too many other politicians really believe that because they're not doing very much about it. So I would imagine that this is going to, that being illegal immigration, is going to be high on his list of things to do should he be a long shot winner, should he become president of the United States. Okay, now when was this? I wrote, I would say it's been maybe a week. I wrote about the Confederate flag. And since the shootings in South Carolina, the whole ban the Confederate flag movement has really taken on steam. Now, we know all of the camps, don't we? We know most of the camps. There's a camp that says the Confederate flag represents the most vile, darkest period in our nation's history, the period of slavery and Jim Crowism, and even today they would say racism. So there's no way that we should have the Confederate flag flying from atop of government buildings like state capitals. Many people in that camp say it is time to outright ban the flag. No one should ever even make that flag again. No company should sell that flag again. Nobody should even put replicas of it, not bumper stickers. Don't wear T-shirts. Nothing even loosely associated, let alone directly associated with the Confederate flag, should even exist in America anymore. A lot of people are saying that. And by the way, lots of companies are on with that. And lots of organizations are on with that feeling. In fact, Walmart, they say, you know what? We have to admit, it's wrong. And we will not sell that flag any longer. I saw a story. It's just not a funny story, actually, but it's kind of mind-boggling, actually. Did you see the story about this guy? He went to Walmart, and he said he wanted to order a cake with the Confederate flag on it. And he said that it was only to celebrate his history, his ancestry. And the guy at Walmart, the baker, I guess, told him, I'm sorry, sir, but we cannot make a Confederate flag for you. We no longer do that. Sorry about that. So the guy says, okay, and he leaves. But the guy comes back. I don't think he came on the same day, though. But he does return to Walmart, that very same Walmart, at that very same bakery department. And you know what he asked for this time? He asked the baker to make him a cake with the ISIS flag on it. Or if you're President Obama, the ISIL flag. And the baker says, okay, what size cake do you want? You want the flag colors to be exactly as they are? And the guy, he was flabbergasted. He was like, wait a minute. I was just in here. And I asked you to make me a cake with the Confederate flag, and you told me no? And now I walk in here and I ask you to make me a cake with this murderous group of terrorists, and you say, okay? How much do I want to spend? That's like the lunacy of this. Everybody's so laser focused on we've got to get rid of the Confederate flag. And then they're doing stupid things like, but if you want a flag from ISIL, fine. If you want an ISIS flag, that's okay by us. After all, they didn't hold slaves. Actually, they do like worse than hold slaves. They're slaughtering people, cutting off the heads of children. They put people like, I saw this like a week or two ago. They put like a bunch of people in this huge cage, and then they put an underwater camera in the cage, and then they lowered the cage and they drowned all the people. But it's okay to make a flag for ISIS, but not for the Confederate flag. And let me be clear, and I'm not saying, hey, make a flag for the cake for the Confederate flag. But I just had to point out the absolute idiocy, the lunacy of that particular situation. All right, so it's there. That's the one camp. And then there's the camp that says, we do not espouse racism in any shape, form, or fashion. We support and we embrace and we want to uphold the Confederate flag because of our ancestors. The people in this particular camp say, our ancestors, they fought in the Civil War, and we are Southerners, and it's a part of American history. It's a part of American history that you may not like, but it doesn't change anything. It's a part of American history. And the people in that camp also say, my family, well, many people now, not all, but many of them say, my family didn't own slaves. We had nothing to do with slaves. In fact, we were one step from being slaves ourselves. We just want to keep the flag because it's a part of tradition. It's a part of the great Southern heritage. And clearly here, they're talking about the heritage from their perspective, the heritage that they want to remember and uphold and embrace. The heritage that they would be speaking of is the heritage of bravery for fighting for one's part of the country. I didn't say one's country, one's part of the country. For Southern gentleness. Yes, Mary, the girls would like some tonic. Get the tonic, will you, please? This is what they talk about. And then there's this itty bitty, really tiny little camp where people like me are. And here's where I am at on the Confederate flag. I don't get all riled up, and it doesn't make me cry and shiver and, tremble when I see the Confederate flag. And I have seen people on TV do that. Oh, I can't breathe. I want to exhale, but the Confederate flag is flying over there. Oh, my God. And I'm just looking like, what in the hell is wrong with you? It's a flag, and I understand the flag's history, but come on, drama queen. And actually, that was a guy. The people in my tiny little camp are the people that say, you know what? I understand. I know. I recognize what that flag has represented for a long, long time, for a whole lot of people. For a lot of people, it was about racial pride. Yeah, it was. And for a lot of people, it really was about Southern pride and our honor and honoring our ancestors. Yes, it was. I understand that the Confederate flag, you know what I found interesting? General Robert E. Lee, who obviously had to surrender because the South lost, and he was one of their greatest generals. General Lee said after the South lost that he did not believe that the Confederate flag should be flown. Yes, he did. Why did he say that? He said because he thought it would just stir up too many harsh and hard feelings. He thought it was a bad idea. And you're thinking, yeah, right, Deborah, revisionist historian. No, I'm not. In fact, when they buried General Lee, he didn't have any flag flying at his funeral, which is a high honor for, fallen military people. He didn't want any. There was no American flag, and there was no Confederate flag. He wanted it that way. So that's just as an aside there. But I'm in this camp that says, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, and I tell you the truth, I have always felt this way. I'm not kidding. As long as I've understood history, and I mean like back from grammar school, this is nothing new. And I got to make another aside here. Have you seen young people, like sometimes people who may be in junior high and even high schoolers, and I guess even some college-age people, wearing the Confederate flag? And I'm not talking about somebody that's some Southerner that's down at a school down in the South. I'm talking about Black Americans, young, hip, white Americans who are so liberal they can just bend themselves crazy because they're liberal. They embrace everything. I've even seen some of them wearing the Confederate flag. Because for some of these young people, it doesn't represent that. For some of them, they've made it almost a fashion statement. Now, I'm sure they've backed that off. They've hung it back in their closet. But if you had looked up last year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was no big deal. I remember this story where these college girls, they were down at, what do you call that, when they go down to Georgia for their summer deal? I forget what it is. All the college students, I can't remember the name. But they were down on their their summer break, and they were wearing bikinis fashioned out of the Confederate flag. And a lot of people were very critical of them, and they were like, please, it's no big deal to me. I wear what I want to wear. I'm like, wow. All right, but to finish up, the people that are in my camp, however many, it's not very many, because, the people that are in the first camp I've named, that's like the majority of Americans. Right now, most Americans are they're through with the flag. And they're through with the flag because they say it's about racism. It's about domination. It's about segregation. It's about inequality. So they don't want the flag for those reasons. They say no. And then the other camp that says, no, it's all about honor and goodness and virtue and all of that. And then my tiny little camp that says, you know what, I don't like the Confederate flag, and I've never liked the Confederate flag because the South, as far as I'm concerned, they committed treason. They didn't want to stay with America. They wanted to break off. We'll have our America, you have your America. We'll do our thing, you do your thing. These people, they separated themselves. The secessionists, they were treasonous. That has always been my main thing, and I've always felt they did not get their just due. Instead of it, have you ever seen any of the paintings or read any of the articles about after the war was settled, they didn't get all what they should have gotten? It was just gentlemen sitting there smoking their cigars, and North and South. And I understand because they didn't want it to proliferate, further. They didn't want any more hard feelings or anything like that. But they gave them a pass. Forget about the Confederate flag. They should have dealt with those people for being committing acts of treason. That's what they did. And how dare anybody fly the flag of people that committed treason upon a state building, a state capitol? They were never recognized by the United States, obviously, because they said we're creating our own. They printed their own money. They were setting up their own laws and everything like that. Why would anybody forget about honor and you find another way to honor your relative? You go and have a mural painted of them, But talk about this flag business, and even the people that are crying and whining about all the racism that it represents, move ahead. The flag, and I get it, don't get me wrong, but my point is, that should have been taken care of a long time ago. For me, it's never been about, because the Ku Klux Klan, they carried the Confederate flag. I don't give a damn about a bunch of idiots running around with sheets. I know they were violent and murderous, but I don't carry that kind of baggage. I don't run around talking about, this country's been so mean to me. Yeah, it's been mean, but guess what? We move on. I say take the flag down because it should have never been up in the first place. It had no place in American society. It never has had a place. That's my whole point. You say you don't like this nation. You say I'm separate from this country. I'm creating my own country. These are our states. These states represent our country. We formed our own union, so to speak. And then when we defeat you in war, you still get to fly your flag? That's what victors get to do. That's what people that win wars get to do. People that lose wars don't get to fly their flags, and they sure as heck don't get to fly their flags well over 100 years later. All right, our number here, 312-754-4333. Taking your calls. The phone lines are open. This is Baseline with Chris Bass. I'm Deborah Rowe, sitting in for Chris. Coming up, we've got more talk on the Confederate flag. Also, I want to talk about the young Americans that say, I've had it with America. I want to go. Let me out of here. This is UrbanBroadcastMedia.com.
It's UBM Talk on UrbanBroadcastMedia.com. Call us at 312-754-4333 and get in on the conversation.
Welcome to the second hour of Baseline with Chris Bass, right here on UrbanBroadcastMedia.com. I'm Deborah Rowe, filling in for Chris, and this is my third consecutive week here. And I'll tell you what, I have been having so much fun. It really feels good to be able to get back behind the microphone and just share my thoughts, my opinions on everything. Our phone line here is 312-754-4333. That's the number you call to share your opinion. Now, before I move on, because I wanted to get, man, you know what? I'm just loving doing this internet radio because I'm breaking a few little rules that, as a listener, you probably wouldn't know about, but I'm going to go back real quickly to the, because now I found what I was looking for. I didn't have it at my fingertips earlier. I just want to share real briefly with you some of the crime statistics that show what illegal immigrants are doing. So those of you who say, well, Donald Trump is such a clown, he lied on illegals, like I have been saying repeatedly, the man did not lie. My whole point was, he should not have said that these baddies, these bad people, represent most, and that's what he alluded to, of the illegals. But here, an FBI crime study shows that 75% of those on the most wanted criminals list in Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Albuquerque are illegals. See, I hadn't even put my hand on it, and I knew that. I do check the FBI list occasionally, just want to see if there anybody that I know who made the list, and thankfully, so far, no one has. 1/4 of all inmates in California detention centers are Mexican nationals, as are more than 40% of all inmates in Arizona, 48% of those people in New Mexico jails as well, over 53% of all investigated burglaries reported in California, New Mexico, Nevada, Arizona, and Texas are perpetrated by illegal aliens. 63% of drivers cited in Arizona have no license, no insurance, no registration for the vehicle. Of that number, 97% are illegal aliens. 66% of cited drivers in New Mexico have the same situation: no license, no insurance, no vehicle registration. The numbers are pretty scary there. So again, and that's representing 3 or 4 states. So you could say, what about the other 46 states? Well, those are the border states. So that's where you would have your heaviest populations there. I just wanted to, give you that information just in case you were wondering, why would she say that he didn't lie? Well, again, what he said was not inaccurate. Part of what he said. The other part of what he said was very inaccurate. And I truly believe that most of the illegals, and I can say that with great confidence because there are just millions that are here. You notice how they've been saying for about the past 25, 30 years, we have 11 million illegals in the country? You still think that? They still say that. And I know this because, whoa, my goodness, back in like 85, I shot a public service announcement for Travelers and Immigrants Aid, and I think their numbers were like around 9 million. Then a little later it was 11 million. And pretty much people still say 11 million. You better triple or quadruple that number. That's why I say no, most are good people. Okay, now I want to move on. And again, if you want to comment on the Confederate flag, or if you really quite don't know where I'm coming from on the Confederate flag, let me just put it in a nutshell. The Confederate flag is an illegitimate flag. It is not a legal flag as far as I'm concerned. Because as far as I'm concerned, when you say that you have succeeded from the nation, bye, see ya. That's the way I feel about it. And that's why I say it just never has made sense to me. Why do people honor that flag? You want to honor your relatives? Go honor your relatives. Throw a party. You know? Go write some poetry. Record it in the library somewhere and ask the library. You know, I'm serious about that. You can tell them, George Hitchcock was my great-great-grandfather. I think I may have to add another great to that. Great-great-great-grandfather. And he fought in the Civil War, and as a Southerner, I really appreciate his contribution. And I've written all of this information about, great-great-grandpa Hitchcock, and I would like for you to record this in our local library. Well, I think they can do that. That's fine. Well, maybe not, because then somebody would come and say, you know what? We've got to shut this library down. They've got books and articles and poems about people that fought in the Confederate War. We've got to close it. You know that would happen. That's why see, once you start picking and choosing things like that, based on reasons such as it represented this during this period, it meant that during this period, well, you just logically, you just have to continue to expand that. You have to almost say no retailer in America should be allowed to sell clothing with the Confederate flag emblem on it or image on it. You almost have to say no movie should be shown on television in America. And I'm not being facetious either. To me, that's where this is where this ultimately will go. This is where this will go. It has to come down because it shouldn't have been up there because they were committing an act. They committed treason. That's just the bottom line. Period. All right, let me move on because I do want to get in this story about George. What did I say last time? Takei? Okay, Takei now. George Takei, the guy from Star Trek, the Asian actor from Star Trek. And for those of you too young to remember him from Star Trek, not that you would necessarily remember him from this, but he is in a public service announcement with one of my all-time favorite actresses, Patty Duke. They're talking about Social Security. Wait a minute, then you wouldn't want to see that either, so you would be too young for that. But Star Trek's fans, Trekkies, they know George. It would be Takei this time. They know George Takei. Anyways, to get to the point, Clarence Thomas, has it been a week already? Or has it been better than a week? Well, when the gay marriage law was passed, when the Supreme Court decided it's time for America to have gay marriage in all 50 states, Clarence Thomas was one of the dissenters. He did not agree with that. And of course, the critics, they've never liked Clarence Thomas, anyways. Why? Not so much. I know a lot of you think it's because he's black. And he's, because he's black. No, they never liked Clarence Thomas because he's a conservative. And you can't be those two things. You can be anything else. You could be a former athlete and a transgendered, or a former athlete and I don't know what Bruce Jenner is. You can be anything in America, but those two things don't go together. You cannot be black and you cannot be conservative. Because when you are black and conservative, Everybody feels they have a right, in fact, if not an obligation, to attack and tear you down. The Catholic Church always says that because we're Catholics, comedians feel it's okay to make all kinds of crude jokes about Catholics. And evangelicals say the same thing, and women say the same thing, and fat people say the same thing. Gays, no, they really don't say it because nobody in their right mind is going to make a joke about a gay right now. However, all of those groups that I just mentioned, yeah, some people do that, but mostly people don't. But black and conservative all day, all night, 24/7, 365, people feel I have a right to do that now. That I have a right to do. Now, about Clarence Thomas, being a dissenter, not agreeing, not voting to approve gay marriage in America, well, one of the things that he said, I guess in response in good part to people who were saying that he was, by not supporting gay marriage, and others who did not or do not support gay marriage, they are denying gays and lesbians their dignity. Yeah, that was the big to-do about Clarence Thomas and others, that to deny lesbians and gays the right to marry. So it really shouldn't be and others, because others had nothing to do with the vote. It was the Supreme Court, so it was mostly directed at Clarence Thomas, that he was denying gays and lesbians their dignity by not supporting marriage. Well, here's what Clarence Thomas said, and I'm going to quote here. He said, "Human dignity cannot be taken away by the government," he wrote. "Slaves," he went on to write, "did not lose their dignity any more than they lost their humanity because the government allowed them to be enslaved. Those held in internment camps did not lose their dignity because the government confined them." 312-754-4333. So what do you think? Did Clarence Thomas say something that really should have opened him up to all kinds of criticism? Or did he actually make sense? And I know I have to say this, because I know for some people it is anathema to them to say that Clarence Thomas made sense about anything. But come on and try it if you think that way. If you don't, you just don't. But if you really do feel, you know what, he was right, go on, make yourself say it. Or at least if you think it, just kind of like say, okay. Well, he was absolutely right. He was right. You know how, think about this. Remember when you were growing up, and let's say you were at school, and a couple of kids in a certain group may have called you a name. Maybe they called you ugly or stupid or, dumb, whatever. And you came home crying. They called me dumb. And what did your mother tell you? Besides sticks and stones, besides that one. That it shouldn't matter to you what they say about you. You know who you are. You keep being you. Conduct yourself as a young lady, as a young man. Don't stoop to their level. They're the idiots because they are acting like idiots, humiliating someone, belittling this person, in a sense, striking at their humanity. Okay, maybe your mom didn't say all of that. Maybe she just said, get your butt in your room and stop being a little crybaby. She could have said that too. But basically, that's what parents have always told their children, particularly those who, were offended by someone. You don't let that sway who you are. You are who you are. And if anybody has a problem in this mix here, it's the people who are bothering you, who are picking on you. That's the little person. That's the person of low character. And that's essentially the point that Clarence Thomas was making. Being a slave did not take away these individuals' dignity. These men and women still, the essence of who they were as men and women, people who loved themselves, who loved their God, who loved their children, who who love their life. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying their lives as being slaves, but the life that God had breathed into them. Who was going to change that? No. And if you don't buy that, then tell me this. Who actually had more dignity? The people who endured the brutality of slavery, or the brutes who enslaved and brutalized the slaves? That's a no-brainer to me. It really is. It's like a no-brainer. The slaves maintained their dignity. Because they were slaves didn't mean that they no longer had dignity. They, in fact, did. They still had their humanity. The peoples whose humanity was shriveled up were the people who enslaved other human beings. Where's the humanity in that? So now that I've laid that groundwork, now we move forward. And we find that Star Trek actor George Takei, he took great issue with Clarence Thomas. He was not having any of that. So he decides to get on his Facebook and he calls Thomas basically a clown in blackface. I'm going to have to pull up his direct quote because I do have it here. I've got about 4 or 5 windows open. But that's essentially what he did. He called him a clown in blackface. A clown in blackface. First of all, I heard a little girl, she kept saying that. First of all, here's a Supreme Court justice. Now, you and me sitting in our homes, and if you want to call him a clown in blackface, knock yourself out. But here's a guy who is a known public figure. I think that takes on a whole nother level of disrespect. So he calls him a clown in blackface. And, many people have talked about this. And I have a friend of mine sent me this post from Alfonso Rachel. And you probably have seen Alfonso Rachel maybe on TV. Maybe you've come across his blog. But he wrote a hell of a piece about George Takei's comments about Justice Clarence Thomas. And one of the things that essentially he says is that, okay, you're feeling real comfortable right now calling this man a clown in blackface because it's okay, because you're gay Takei. Actually, the title reads, A Clown in Blackface? Is that okay to say because you're gay Takei? Well, I'll let you decide for yourself. But I'm going to ask you this. There is an extremely short list of people that you could talk about publicly and get away with. And yeah, I would say gays are on that list, and I'm not suggesting that there's something wrong with that. I really do not believe that we should be about the business of vilifying people if they haven't, gone out and committed a crime or lied or stolen or cheated someone or something like that. But because somebody is gay, I don't think that it's okay to beat up on them. But I do agree. George Takei feels he's in this cocoon. He's an openly gay man, and he feels, aside from the fact, and I don't totally agree with Alfonso Rachel on this, it's not just because he's gay that he's, secure in being able to just jump out and beat up on Clarence Thomas because he's in this protected cocoon. No, he did that in part, but he really did it because Clarence Thomas is a black conservative. And it's okay, even if he were a straight man. If he disagreed with him, he really could go there and nobody else would say much about it. Our number here is 312-754-4333. Real simple, real easy. So was Clarence Thomas right? That slaves had dignity. That being a slave did not take away their dignity. It did not remove their humanity. He said both of those things were intact with the slaves. And this is the thing that Alfonso Rachel points out in agreement with Clarence Thomas. He says, in fact, the people who didn't have dignity and who did not have humanity were the people who were doing the enslaving. And on that point, I absolutely agree. So we've got a little stack of stuff over here. We've got the Donald Trump story where I said Donald didn't lie. He just didn't properly state the facts. And the facts are, of course, what they are. Most illegals are not out here raping and dealing drugs and committing crimes. That most of them are just, well, they are committing crimes. I have to admit that. Because they crossed into the border illegally, thus the name illegal aliens. But aside from crossing over the border, they're not dealing drugs and they're not raping. So we have that on the table. Also, the Confederate flag, if you want to get in on that. The time management issue, if you can help me deal with my issue of poor time management, I'd love to hear from you on that. Now, I want to move on. We get a couple of headlines in here because this headline, I want to get it in before we move on to our next topic. Did you know that former U.S., I want to say, now look, I can't even remember, Congressman Mel Reynolds. You know he was in trouble. We know that he was the guy who felt that he had hit the jackpot years ago when one of his teenage campaign workers, he was going to have sex with her, and he really thought he had hit the jackpot because she was a Catholic schoolgirl, apparently fulfilling one of his big sexual fantasies about having sex with a Catholic schoolgirl. And of course, when that all came out, he got in trouble and he was arrested and he went to jail, and then he got in trouble about some mortgage fraud and all of that. So the man served his time, and then he came out and he tried to do some community service. And I'm a person like this. When you have paid your debt to society, I really believe, then you paid your debt. Now move on with your life. Well, he paid his debt to society, and then he went out and accumulated yet another debt. Mel Reynolds, of course, he had to make a living, so I don't know what he was doing, but he was over in Africa and apparently making some money. How much, I really don't know. But he didn't pay his taxes, at least that's the allegation. He owes the government taxes. And then how does this work? But somehow, when he was in Africa, and I guess trying to leave the country, or maybe actually trying to stay in the country, however it went, officials got a hold of his cell phone, and there was allegedly pornography. Hey, boy, here we go again. Pornography on his cell phone. All right, so he's in a whole nother heap of trouble. Well, the headline today is that Mel Reynolds had court today. Guess where Mel Reynolds was? I don't know where he was, but I do know where he wasn't. He wasn't in court. Mel Reynolds was a no-show today. You ever think about, well, I want you to imagine this. You know how a snowball, when it goes down a snow-covered hill, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And maybe all of that could have been avoided, maybe if someone hadn't kicked the snowball or pushed the snowball down the hill. If he would just do what's right. It seems like he's just incapable of doing what's right. So that's in the news, Mel Reynolds. And actually, in a way, just in a way, I kind of owe the start of my radio career in Chicago to Mel Reynolds. In a way, I do. And I'll tell you why. Years ago, I was at home, and I've always been a huge fan of talk radio. Well, I'm listening to a talk show, and they were doing a discussion about Mel Reynolds. And Mel Reynolds, and for those of you who do not know this, and I'm not going to hash up a whole lot of stuff because it's Mel Reynolds, and I really could hash up a whole lot of stuff that, interestingly, the media, Chicago mainstream media, never really ever covered, but there was a whole lot of other stuff. But anyways, I decided to call in because actually a friend of ours, I should say, my husband and mine, lived on the same floor with Mel. In fact, he lived next door. And without getting ugly, because there's no need to get ugly, I did say the man paid his debt to society, and until he's convicted in a court of law, it's still paid, so I won't go there. But the bottom line was, I called to this station, and I'm giving my opinion about Mel Reynolds, and I'm talking, and I'm blah, blah, blah. And then after I'd made my comment, and thank you for taking my call, whatever. And then there's a voice that said, "Young lady, don't hang up. I need to talk with you." And I'm like, where did that come from? But there was a man in the studio. I did not know he was in the studio with the host. So when they go into break, the guy picks up the phone, and he was the general manager of the radio station. And he asked me, he said, I need to know. I need all the details. I need to know what else you know about Mel Reynolds. I'm like, I don't know anything else about Mel Reynolds. And he was like, well, you spoke with such authority. You spoke with such passion. I just assumed you had a lot more information about Mel Reynolds. No, I don't. And he said, oh, okay, then. I said, wait, before you go. Are you hiring? And that one thing led to another, and then I got a talk show, and then, on and on and on. So that's why I say, in a way, Mel Reynolds kind of helped me get my radio career started in Chicago. I'd been on the air before, but in Chicago. So for that, I say thank you, Mel Reynolds. Our number here is 312-754-4333. Coming up, we have some more headlines. Also, I want to talk with you about what apparently many millennials are saying about our country and what they want to do with our country. I'm Deborah Rose, sitting in for Chris Bass. This is Baseline with Chris Bass on UrbanBroadcastMedia.com.
Now back to the conversation on UBM Talk.
You're listening to Baseline with Chris Bass right here on UrbanBroadcastMedia.com. That's UBM.com. Our number here is 312-754-4333. And I'm Deborah Rowe. I've been sitting in for Chris. Today, last week, it was Harold Lee Rush along with myself. And the week before that, it was just me. And I do have in studio with me my lovely daughter, Myra, who has joined me each and every week, sitting here and patiently waiting for me. I thank you for that, Myra. All right, a couple other headlines here before we move on and talk about what millennials are saying they want to do. But I'm sure you've heard, and I haven't been following it as closely, but the madness that's going on over in Greece, it's really something. And right now, some people are even saying that, well, if you plan on going on vacation, this is what some people are saying, you may want to avoid going to Greece. You may want to avoid that. Head on over to Cyprus if you just have to go to Greece, but don't go to Greece. Go to the little neighboring country there. And that's because they have been, economically, they are in just a massive turmoil. And I can't help but think about something that I wrote, oh goodness, maybe 3-4 years ago. And it was about Greece, but more specifically, it was about the healthcare there. And in Greece, like in many other European nations, everybody got free healthcare. Free healthcare for everybody. And the problem there in Greece was that people who had, I'm not talking about a hangnail, I'm not talking about a broken finger, but people who had very serious medical conditions were waiting 3-4 months. And I mean, really serious. And then people with problems that most of us wouldn't wait around for a couple of weeks, they would wait 6 months. But everybody had free health care. And that was like a huge, and I'm certain it's a big complaint still and probably going to get a whole lot bigger, was that they were like, yeah, we have socialized health care. We got free health care, but the quality of our care is terrible. And I had another blog at the time, and I put up a picture, actually several pictures from an article that I had read where this mom and dad, I mean, their kid, I can't remember exactly what it was, but the kid was really, really sick. And they got one doctor, because they knew somebody, to virtually break the law and come and treat this kid. That's why a lot of people were saying, we seriously want to mimic, do we seriously want to mimic all of these countries? Because most of them are now like bemoaning the fact that, yeah, we're covering everybody, but what's the coverage? What's the care? So the way we had it here before Obamacare, I still maintain we needed to revise our system. And the way I always thought the revision should at least start off was to open up competition across state lines. I always thought that was a good way to go. But who am I? However, when you have so many countries, I remember an article out of the Daily, I believe it was the Daily Mail, where all of these women in England, they were marching and they were protesting. You know what they were protesting? And you're thinking, Deborah, what does this have to do with Greece? It actually has a lot to do with Greece. Because these women in England, they were all protesting the fact that American women, now this was before Obamacare, that American women had access to experimental drugs for breast cancer, for treating breast cancer. Not that they didn't have it in England. They really couldn't give it to anybody because it cost so much, and this is what the point was. But under their socialized system of health care, they couldn't afford to give it to anybody. In our country, if a doctor felt that the stage or the type of cancer warranted that particular medication, they could do it. Even people who are poor don't have to die in America with or without Obamacare. No, they don't. No, they don't. Because all the critics were telling us, and people are dying in the streets because they can't get health care. No, they're not. Never have. Now, maybe somebody died in the street because they couldn't get to a particular type of trauma center in time. They had to be transported on the other side of town. We don't deny. It's against the law. You don't deny people. All right. Now let me get back to Greece. A part of their problem is that they had such incredible, and they have such incredible debt that just wouldn't stop mounting. It wouldn't stop. It won't stop. In fact, their finance minister, he resigned today. And don't think he caused it all himself, you know. They had politicians who were willing to promise the citizenry everything. Everything. You want it? We'll give it to you. You don't really think you should pay for it? We'll cover you for it. You want it for free? We'll give it for free. I remember one time somebody was saying, in France, everybody gets to take time off if they have a baby. And husbands, if they want to stay home, they could stay home. And the streets are really, really clean there. And the government takes care of all of that. Actually, that was a caller once. Yeah, and guess what? They pay a rate of tax that is just obscene. Nothing's for free. And now it's really coming home to the people in Greece, to the Greeks. You weren't getting anything for free. You were delaying payment. That's all you were doing. You weren't getting free health care. You were delaying payment. And you covered everybody. So now you simply delayed a bigger payment. It wasn't free education for everybody. It was a delayed payment plan, and that's all it was. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, but here in America, we keep thinking that the definition of insanity does not apply to us. It applies to everybody else, but it doesn't apply to us. We can continue to drive up our debt. We can continue to spread out free everything, and we keep thinking nobody has to pay for it. Well, I'll tell you what. Ask Mayor Rahm Emanuel. Ask Governor Rauner. I mean, just two examples. Because now they have to figure out how are they going to pay a whole lot of bills that were created and no real monies were going to cover any of that. we'll just raise the taxes on the taxpayers later. I didn't say Emmanuel or Rauner said that, but that's what their predecessors always felt. We'll just inch in a little tax here and a little tax there. Or the other thing, we'll make those rich people pay. They've got to learn to pay their fair share. Well, here's the dirty little secret. When it all does come tumbling down, and if we don't change our wicked ways, it's going to happen here too. The rich have enough money. They'll survive. But until we, Americans, until we really come to grips with the idea that we can't keep spending and we can't keep borrowing and we can't keep raising taxes on people to say, well, we need to cover this, eventually the weight becomes too great. And when the weight becomes too great, the whole thing collapses. So when we turn on our television this evening and when we watch, the Greeks are lining up and they want to get money out of the ATM. And what do they have, a limit? I thought the other day they were saying the limit was like $60 a day or something like that. And it actually could get a lot worse. It could get a lot worse. I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer, but when I see this story, I really do feel, because I always remember that mom and dad whose little girl was so sick, and they were going to have to wait a long, long time just to see a doctor. But everybody was covered. We're too smart in this country to have really, we can do better. We can come up with ways, because all we're doing is pushing the bad news down the road. But we're going to keep going down that road, and the bad news is going to turn around and stare us dead in the face and say, now you're going to deal with me. And none of us want to do that. All right, let's move on here, because now, and this is actually a decent segue. It really is. This is actually a decent segue. We've got millennials, we've got young people, and again, I kind of get tied up with the ages. Now, okay, someone said 18 to 34. We've got young Americans ages 18 through 34, the people that we call millennials. A poll was just conducted, TransferWise. They have a poll that shows 35% of those born in the United States would consider ditching their home country to live elsewhere. That's 35% of people. But that number skyrockets among millennials, the 18 through 34-year-olds. 55% say that, you know what, they would take off in a heartbeat if they had a chance. And they say that most people, like, 65% of Americans say, you know what, yeah, things get rocky and things get rough and we fuss and we fight and we have troubled times. But 65% of adults say, I choose America. I want to stay here. And the number one reason they say that they will stay in America no matter what happens, they say because it's home. It's home. Then another question asked, 58% said that they would say thanks to romantic and family ties, and then just, they would just, they would just go. But when you start talking to young Americans, and that's really the point, because I never like to get bogged down in a bunch of statistics, because they always just make your eyes glaze over. So the real point is this. Older people, and we can say people over the age of 34 on up, most older Americans, and I know you guys are in your 30s and you're saying, I don't know who she's talking to. I am not old. I mean, outside of the millennial range. Most Americans say, I want to keep America. I want to stay here. I don't want to go. But these young people are saying, you know what? This country is really starting to suck. I don't like it. I'm going to school, or I went to school, and I can't find a job. They're talking about, well, here, it is worthwhile noting, this is from the article, that the same millennials who say that they would leave the United States, they absolutely voted overwhelmingly for a president back in 2012. 67% of them. How about that? and the president obviously still being in office, but now when asked, they say, let me the hell up out of here. Now, I don't see anywhere in this article where they're making a direct tie, but the point of it being, they feel the country has digressed so poorly, they would like to leave. If they had the opportunity, they would leave. And you know what I'm thinking, these poor young people. Sometimes young people, and this is just 55% of the respondents, but like with all other polls, it's supposed to represent the whole. Stop being so darn fragile. Seriously, we've had bad times, and we'll have good times. We've had good times, and we'll have bad times. But I like what the majority of the people outside of the millennial age group are saying. This is home. And maybe a lot of them have voters' remorse. And maybe a lot of them feel, well, damn, you promised me change and transformation, and now I can't get a job, and now this, and crime rates are so high. I want to leave this country. Isn't that like some people, though? Especially young people that are used to getting their way. When they can't get their way, when the game doesn't go exactly the way they want, what do they oftentimes do? Give me my ball, I'm going home. Except this time they're saying, I want to leave home. I don't like the way things are working. I mean, where are you going to go? Seriously, where are you going to go? Well, we know Greece is off the table right now. And then I read an article earlier. Some are even saying that the European Union itself may be in a little bit of trouble. And that doesn't surprise me. Because again, when you've got this whole socialist, and by the way, another aside, I was at this party for the 4th. It was a wonderful, wonderful party. In fact, I put it in my top 2 or 3 of the best parties I've ever been to in my life. Now, that's saying a lot, because I've done a lot of partying, and I've gone to a lot of parties. But this party was so nice. But I met a guy there. My husband and I were talking to him, a young man who identified himself as a socialist. He said that he was a socialist. Now, what was interesting, he was well off. He was a well-off guy, and he was a socialist, which when you really, really get down to brass tacks, those two usually go together, well off and socialism. But I really found him to be a very interesting guy, and I don't think, he may actually be on the upper end of the millennial age group, or maybe just outside of the millennial age group. But he's lived in various parts of the world. And even this guy was saying, you know, he's making his mark here in America. The only thing he would want it to do, he wanted to, again, spread out the government's largesse, make more things available to more people for free. And I kept thinking to myself, you may be successful. And I know from what you said, you've had a little help in attaining that success. But I don't think he's really thought that through. Well, he actually, maybe he did, because one thing he did keep saying was he thought that we needed to change the tax structure. And then, of course, then my eyes started to glaze over, because then you're getting way ahead of me with that one. So even he did note that. But these young people, they're upset because, again, the jobs, they're upset because of how tough things are. And even the Confederate flag issue is prompting them to feel they want to leave America, because there are states that continue to fly the Confederate flag. And I'm thinking, wussy. To me, I'm serious about this. There comes a point where you have to say, you know what? I may not agree, and I have the right to express myself. I have a right to get out and protest. I have a right to boycott. I have a right, to turn off a show or whatever the case may be, because that is your right. But since when did people, and I mean 55%, when you really think about it, that's actually an amazingly high number of young Americans. When you get young Americans feeling that way, we're in trouble. Now I want to segue over to this other story. There was a teacher, because all of these stories that kind of are interrelated. A teacher recently, and I'm not going to even be able to pull this story up because I can't pull up as many as I want, But I know about this teacher that just got fired downstate. Got fired for stepping on the flag. Now, what really made me want to take a look into that story is because it was only a few days ago when my son, who's 17 years old, he asked me, he said, "Hey, Mom, have you heard about the latest trend?" I said, that depends. What's the trend? Stepping on the flag, stomping on the flag, dancing on the flag. I'm like, oh, that again. Because, I mean, it's really not new. I guess it just hadn't been done as a trend, but people have done that. But we have this teacher downstate that stepped on the flag and was fired for that. And this is a debate that really has been going on for quite some time. And that is it okay as an expression of protest to tear up the flag, to cut up the flag, to burn the flag? Because I guess cutting it up would really be illegal. But to burn the flag, to walk on the flag, to destroy the flag in any way. And if that's a trend, and I don't imagine a whole lot of, older people doing it, not that I'm trying to be an ageist or anything like that. But I mean, what is that trend saying? What is the message if people are in fact doing that? And we do know that one teacher certainly did do it. They were fired because of it. But what's the underlying issue here? People wanting to leave the country. A whole 55% of young Americans 18 to 34 years old saying, if I just could put, the money together, if I just had the opportunity, I'd move away. Teachers walking on flags, people saying, forget about the twerk, now it's time to stomp on the flag. There seems to be just an undercurrent there, that there's a dissatisfaction. And this is like one of my cardinal rules, and I try never to do this. Close your show out on a heavy. And I'm going to try and pull up something that's a little bit lighter. But it's made me think about it, and that's one of the things I loved about the 4th of July party I went to. Nobody was talking about America. Don't get me wrong. Nobody was talking about the flag. Actually, somebody did say something about the Confederate flag, but it was none of that. What made that party really special to me, though, it was such a broad cross-section of people. There were blacks. There were whites. There were people born in the country. There were people from outside the country. East Africa, Asia, Puerto Rico, Mexico. Seriously. And everybody was just having such a wonderful time. And people were just so cool. And we were talking about all kinds of subjects. And even me and my husband and the young socialist guy, we had such a robust discussion. And we laughed. And they smoked cigars. And we had our drinks. And nobody was angry. Because everybody respected everybody. I didn't probably agree with probably half the people there. And it makes me just wonder, so what are younger Americans really seeing? What are they seeing that they find so distasteful? That you would want to just, walk away. And then the thing that really gets me, walk away where? Show me where in the world you can go and life's going to be a whole lot better than it is here. I know some people will point to Switzerland, but I don't think Switzerland would take them unless they're independently wealthy, unless they already have a sponsor there, because they really do they're quite selective about who comes into their country. We aren't, and yet we don't hold anybody down for it. In fact, our politicians, as we've been talking about early in the show, our politicians are even willing to break laws and ignore laws to give people who are coming into our country opportunity. You try to go to, it's just the list goes on. Most countries today, they are not so warm to immigrants coming in, legal or otherwise, unless they are affluent. Most countries say, we want your wealthy. We say, give us your poor, your humble, and all of that. So maybe the rhetoric has just gotten so charged, or maybe so many young people are immersed in environments where all they hear is how bad things are, how bad people are, how hateful people are, how mean people are. I don't know. I'm just thinking maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe they're not around enough positive, enough optimistic people. Maybe they don't know enough people in their circles who don't see that authority is bad, institutions are bad, churches are bad. Maybe that's the problem. I don't really know, but it's curious to me, and I think that should give us all pause, because our young people, these are the people who will be, if they don't leave. I mean, if they stay, hopefully they don't leave, but if they stay, these are the people who will be our teachers, driving all of our public, transportations, and our doctors, and so on and so forth. And if they're harboring, real hard feelings like, I hate this place, I mean, what kind of work will they do? If you don't like the place, then I don't think you're going to do your very best. Well, I'll tell you what, I want to say I've done my very best. I've done my very best to have a very good time, and that's exactly what I've had. Chris Bass, I know you're coming back real soon, sir. I'm happy to have had the opportunity to sit in for you. I want to thank Brittany for all of her work, and thank you, too, for listening to UrbanBroadcastMedia.com.